board or go in the garage, go in a closet, somewhere that you can play with it. Or do a wall knowing, you know what, I'm just going to do this little wall knowing I'm going to sand it down, re-prime it, and start all over. A trick of the trade that I do is kind of what we did here. When you do these things, what I always do is just take a fingerful of the paint and I put it here, and then I take a fingerful of that and put it here as they're solid, and then I write down really what color they are. I always also write down step, because in spite of what you think you're going to remember, when you go back to do this, you don't. So you go step 1, base coat, first glaze, 4-part, blah blah, or write it on the back. I mean, that's the real way of going about it, to making sure that you're not going to forget. So if your sister-in-law loves it, or you move and you think, God, I want to do that again, but I can't remember what colors I used or the paint. The nice thing about these flexible boards that I use, they're pre-primed, sort of. What they mean is they just absorb the paint without having to prime them. But the nice thing about it is you can roll them up, put them on a rubber band, take them to the store, and you can shop for rugs and fabrics and towels, and never think you have to remember a color, because the colors will always be there.
You have these boards, do they come like 10 for something, or 8 individually?
They're individually, I think they're what, $275, I believe they're $275 each on those. And I mean, I just think they're awesome, and you can repaint them over and over again.
Oh, really?
So it's not like, and you can use both sides.
Okay.
So they're an advantage to it. Like I said, you can move them around from this wall to that wall just to see how they're going to work out. Any other questions?
Do you carry the sample sizes
of paste? Yes. Now, again, we only carry 280 out of 4,000. So, but I mean, at least if it's not the perfect color, it'll get you there. Yeah. And when you remember also another thing, when you are doing faux finishes, you've got to look at everything backwards. What do you see first? What do you think you see second? Because it's not exactly, because it's not always what you think it is. And always remember that putting a dark color on first is not a bad thing, because it's how you can control a dark color. Just like when I was doing the brown, I put very little in here. See? Very little. So I knew that that wasn't the color I wanted the most, but do you see what ended up happening? Because it's stronger, it takes over. So, but that's a good way of getting a color in that you want that's dark without being like what I call puppy paw prints all over your walls. That is like here, here, here. It's like just kind of modeled into it. So it's there, but you don't see it. And again, all the faux finishers, and I agree with them that the darker the base, the more depth you get to your finish. Unless, there's, like I said, probably 80 to 90% is most of the time we do start with darker colors. And when we do a class...
How dark would you say dark? I mean, how dark is dark when you're saying dark? Like...
Well, it depends on the product. I mean, what you're...
Like your shirt, the green
No,
there.
what technique are we talking?
Well, like the one you just... Well, you
like
just said
color
you get
wash,
it
a color wash needs to be light with a dark top. Okay? When you're doing a rag roll, you can opposite the colors. You could do a very dark red with a kind of a red with a orangey peachy wash over it, or rag over it. Looks awesome.
And the fresco, what would you say?
Fresco? Oh, that's up to the person who wants it. Like some people will think of fresco, and most people do, think of shades of yellows and oranges, golds, yellows, and oranges. So at that point, I would only use one of the colors. So I'd probably use one of the oranges. Then I would use the yellow and the orange back over it. And then I would tea stain it with a tea stain, an umber. So there's no, what you've got to do is look at magazines. You've got to go look at, a store or a house or something, and you've got to get the feeling and then say to yourself, okay, now like for instance, that very first one that's right there, right behind you, is a dark brown with a green on top. Okay, so that's been just the opposite, but do you see how it looks almost black? But it's
Mhm.
just a brown. So, I mean, it just depends on what you're going to do and what the drama that you're trying to bring out. Now, if somebody wanted brown, that's how you bring in brown, but most of that is really green.
Mhm.
So, you got to think backwards a little bit when you do some of these.
Those color samples, whoever thought of those color samples,
Yeah, they're awesome.
because we all have had many gallons of paint, and it's like, that's great.
Yeah.
That'd be the thing to do, buy those color samples and just start with a dark
Right.
base and do it.
Yeah, try different.
As far as the wall prep.
Great question.
Yeah, should always prime before.
You have to
basic
treat
coat?
it, yeah, it's a great question. You have to treat it just like you would, like, I'm going to paint this room blue today. You've got to nail holes, nail pops, cracks, because if you don't, you're going to see all that. You prime because of a drastic color change, poor
What
quality of
about,
paint.
like if it's removing wallpaper, and you
Definitely.
might not get all the base.
Yeah, and ideally what you need to use there is an oil-based primer, because you want to
Okay.
seal out any glue residue, because water-based will reactivate it.
Okay, if you use an oil-based primer. Yeah.
You can, no, you can go back to latex.
Oh,
Yeah, primer is a generic, it just kind of knows what to do at the right time. Yeah, great question.
Just not forget.
You always want,
Well, you just want to throw the roller away.
Again, the
primers always white.
We tint most of our primers, I think we tint probably 98% of the primer that goes on.
Definitely cuts down on your
Yeah, it
coverage,
helps.
right.
It helps.